Have you ever walked into a room and felt like the walls noticed you more than the people? You were there, fully present, yet somehow invisible. Not because you lacked words, but because your presence didn't speak before you did. Maybe you spoke up in a meeting and no one reacted. Then someone else repeated your exact words moments later, and suddenly they got nods and applause. Or maybe you felt that awkward silence after you introduced yourself, and people just moved on like you were another blur in the background. That kind of invisibility doesn't bruise the skin, it bruises the soul. And if you've ever felt it, you know it stays with you. Because deep down, being ignored feels worse than being disliked. In our noisy world, we're told that to be respected, we must be louder, more charming, more assertive, to interrupt, to dominate, to fake it till we make it. But the paradox is, the more we try to force respect, the more it escapes us. Because respect, real, quiet, lasting respect, isn't something you beg for. It's something you command. And the way you do that is the opposite of what most people believe. You don't earn respect by explaining yourself constantly. You command it by not needing to. You don't shout to be heard. You lower your voice and let the silence build weight. You don't chase validation. You embody such calm certainty that people pause when you walk in. Not because of what you say, but because of what you don't have to. They can feel it. This is not about tricks. It's not about charisma or social hacks. It's about understanding the deep Stoic principle that your presence begins long before your words do, and your silence is often the loudest thing in the room. In the next few minutes, I'll show you how to shift from being overlooked to quietly, undeniably commanding the room without needing to raise your tone, betray your nature, or beg for attention. This is not about controlling others. It's about controlling what they sense without saying a word. Respect isn't claimed, it's felt. And you're about to feel exactly why. Most people spend their lives chasing approval, as if respect were a prize handed out by others. They work harder, speak louder, dress better, even shrink themselves to fit expectations, hoping someone will finally say, "You matter." But no one tells you the truth. The more you perform for respect, the more invisible you become. Because people don't respect effort that reeks of desperation. They respect certainty, stillness, a sense of inner gravity that doesn't flinch when ignored. We were taught to believe that respect is earned through achievement, titles, success. The problem is, we all know someone who's accomplished much, yet gets walked over. And we also know people who say very little, do very little, yet somehow command attention. That's because respect isn't transactional, it's energetic. It flows to those who don't need it. In today's world, especially online, everyone's broadcasting. Everyone's trying to prove something. The loudest voice, the flashiest image, the cleverest take. But in this chaotic noise, the human mind is quietly wired to notice one thing: contrast. And nothing contrasts chaos better than calm. Nothing contrasts insecurity better than stillness. And in a sea of performers, the one who doesn't flinch becomes the axis everyone orbits around. You see, we've been tricked by a cultural lie that being nice, agreeable, and non-threatening guarantees respect. But Stoicism flips this illusion on its head. Respect doesn't come from making others comfortable. It comes from making them feel your boundaries without ever having to announce them. A man who commands respect doesn't chase. He doesn't over-explain. He doesn't defend his worth in words. His very presence makes people adjust their tone, measure their words, second-guess their dismissiveness. Not because he demands it, but because they sense that he doesn't need them. And ironically, that's what makes them want to be seen by him. Respect begins with a silent agreement. I see how you carry yourself. I see that you're not performing. You know who you are. And that is rare. If you've ever wondered why some people get listened to before they speak, it's not magic. It's not charisma. It's not manipulation. It's clarity, broadcasted without effort. It's the art of not leaking energy in the pursuit of validation. As one Stoic principle teaches, the moment you need others to see your value, you've already lost control of it. Now that we've shattered the illusion, let's begin building a deeper foundation, not for chasing respect, but for becoming the kind of person who commands it, quietly, unapologetically, strategically. The Stoics believe that respect is never something you demand. It is something that emerges naturally from how you carry yourself. Marcus Aurelius, writing not for an audience but for himself, said it plainly, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's not a poetic quote. That's a psychological law. And in the context of commanding respect, it changes everything. In modern life, we often confuse respect with recognition, but the Stoics separated the two sharply. Recognition is external. Respect is internal, and others feel it when your internal clarity is undeniable. Respect is not transactional, it is gravitational. It is not a currency to be earned by pleasing. It's a force field created by how little you need others to validate you. The less you seek it, the more people feel it around you. Stoicism teaches that your dignity is not up for negotiation, that your emotions are yours to govern, that your posture, tone, and even your silences can carry more strength than your best arguments. A Stoic doesn't manipulate, they magnetize. Their presence isn't about dominance, but about a deep self-anchoring that makes others slow down before dismissing them. That is how respect becomes an involuntary reaction. People simply adjust around you. Imagine someone entering a conversation not to impress, but to observe. Not to win, but to listen. They don't posture, they don't rush to speak. Their gaze is calm, their words few, but precise. In a world addicted to noise, that quiet confidence unsettles the insecure and intrigues the wise. This is the core of Stoic presence. To be unmoved but not distant, firm but not cold, watchful but not performative. Commanding respect isn't about walking into a room and making people fear you. It's about walking into a room and making people feel they must recalibrate because they sense you're grounded in something they can't touch. Restraint, self-possession, internal clarity. Respect doesn't arise when you declare your value. It blooms when you no longer feel the need to. This mindset isn't passive, it's radically intentional. A Stoic learns to preserve energy, to avoid leaking their essence by reacting to everything. They observe insults the way a mountain observes wind, unshaken, unmoved, unchanged. This isn't apathy, it's active self-command. You don't raise your voice because your presence already speaks. You don't defend yourself because your silence already draws boundaries. You don't seek applause because your actions already echo louder than claps. The more you center your energy on what you control, your tone, your presence, your values, the less you waste energy chasing things beyond your reach. And when you stop trying to be seen, you begin to be noticed for the right reasons. This is the Stoic paradox. The less you try to prove your worth, the more undeniable it becomes. Respect in its highest form is never about attention. It's about aura. And that aura is built quietly, piece by piece, in how you sit, how you speak, how you stay calm in chaos, and how you walk away when something doesn't serve your dignity. A Stoic doesn't demand respect. They inhabit it. And by doing so, they become the kind of person whose presence adjusts the behavior of everyone in the room, without needing to ask for anything at all. There was once a man who never had to raise his voice. He worked in a large organization, one of those cold, competitive places where people talked over each other just to be seen. Meetings were battlegrounds. Politeness was a weakness. The loudest people always seemed to win. But he wasn't loud. He wasn't even particularly social. He arrived on time, sat with calm posture, spoke rarely, and when he did, his voice was steady and measured, low, not timid, but composed. While others fought for airtime, he would sit quietly, taking notes, listening without reaction. Some thought he was too passive to climb the ladder, but over time, something strange happened. People started watching him. They didn't understand why, but his silence made them uneasy, like maybe he saw something they didn't. His eyes didn't dart, his hands didn't fidget. When someone interrupted him, he simply paused, turned, and looked, not angrily, not with offense, just a calm, steady gaze that made the interrupter feel smaller without a single word being exchanged. He never rushed to defend his ideas. He let them breathe in the room. When people laughed at him once, an awkward joke at his expense, he didn't flinch, didn't smile, didn't react. He tilted his head slightly as if to ask, "Is that really what you think adds value here?" It wasn't arrogance. It was presence, stillness, a signal that said, "I do not trade my self-respect for approval." His co-workers began to shift. The louder ones toned down their voices when he entered. The manager who once dismissed his points now paused before interrupting. People asked for his opinion more, because when he did speak, it felt like it mattered. Not because he demanded authority, but because he didn't. He didn't ask for respect. He became a mirror, and everyone became more self-conscious in front of it. One afternoon in a heated strategic meeting, the team was spiraling. Everyone arguing, tension thick, egos inflating. He sat in silence for nearly 20 minutes, saying nothing. Then as voices began to overlap and the room frayed, he raised a finger slightly. Everyone stopped. Not because he had seniority, but because his stillness had weight. He waited 2 seconds, then spoke, just one sentence. No fancy words, no force, just clarity. The room shifted, the meeting refocused. People nodded. One of the most competitive managers leaned back and said, "Yeah, that's it." The tension broke. That moment wasn't power in the traditional sense. It was a master class in energetic gravity. He didn't command the room with dominance. He redirected it with presence, and no one forgot it. Later, someone asked him privately how he learned to control a room like that. He smiled faintly and said, "I don't control the room. I control myself. The rest adjusts." He never sought attention, but attention found him, not because of what he projected, but because of what he withheld. He became a man you didn't interrupt, a man you didn't mock twice, a man whose calmness made chaos feel embarrassing in his presence. He had no tricks, no scripts, just discipline, stillness, and self-possession. That is what it means to command respect without ever asking for it, to become a mirror so clear, so unmoved, that others feel their own noise when they stand beside you. That's not charisma, that's character. Most people believe respect is earned over time, through accomplishments, rank, charm, or endless displays of confidence. But the truth is, there are specific behaviors, precise strategies that immediately shift how others perceive you. These aren't tricks. They are expressions of internal mastery. When applied with intention, they command respect before a single word is spoken. Let's explore 4 Stoic strategies that create an undeniable presence, silently, consistently, and without ever needing to demand it. The first is what I call the silent gaze. In most conversations, people wait for their turn to speak, not to understand, but to respond. Their eyes dart, their brows tighten, their energy leaks. But the person who listens with a calm, unbroken gaze, who holds steady eye contact without aggression, simply observing, changes the entire rhythm of the interaction. The Stoics knew that restraint reveals control. When you respond to interruption not with words but with a pause and direct eye contact, the silence becomes louder than any protest. It signals, I am not shaken by noise. I once saw a man regain control of a heated panel discussion without interrupting once, simply by turning and looking directly at the person who cut him off. The room shifted. That's the silent gaze. Unreadable, unafraid, undeniable. The second strategy is the rising gesture. How you move in response to others communicates your internal hierarchy. Imagine someone walks into a room, extends a hand to greet you, and you remain seated, half glancing, offering your hand lazily. That's not humility. That's self-disrespect. But when you rise, even just slightly, meet their eyes and engage with grounded posture, it's not submission, it's presence. Stoicism isn't passive, it's intentional. Marcus Aurelius stood tall not because he needed to be seen, but because he recognized the dignity in showing up fully. Every time you rise to greet, to thank, to acknowledge, you're silently broadcasting, I see myself, I see you. This matters. Third is the disengagement rule. There's power in knowing when to speak, but there's even more power in knowing when to leave. Not dramatically, not spitefully, quietly, clearly. The Stoics taught that staying in disrespectful environments slowly erodes the soul. If someone repeatedly talks over you, dismisses your ideas, mocks your boundaries, and you stay, you train them that you'll tolerate it. But when you disengage early, not to punish, but to protect your inner state, you shift the dynamic. Walking away isn't retreat, it's strategic repositioning. You're not storming out, you're removing your energy from where it's being drained. That's presence in motion. That's self-respect on display. And finally, the fourth strategy, the calm echo. In tense moments, most people escalate. They raise their voice, their pace, their emotional intensity, trying to overpower. But Stoic power moves in the opposite direction. When provoked, the Stoic lowers their tone, slows their speech, cuts through the noise with calm clarity. It disarms, it disrupts. It exposes the instability of the other. I once watched a negotiation where one side grew aggressive, louder, faster, sharper. The other side, one person, responded with 3 words: low, slow, final. The energy collapsed. The room recalibrated. That's the calm echo, not matching chaos, but absorbing it, then reshaping it with grounded presence. Each of these strategies, the silent gaze, the rising gesture, the disengagement rule, the calm echo, are not for performance. They are not manipulation. They are the outward expressions of someone who has made an internal decision. I do not need to prove who I am. I already know. That's the essence of Stoicism. Command respect not by posturing, but by embodying a level of control so rare that people can't help but adjust. People may forget your words, but they never forget how they felt around your energy. And these strategies don't require perfection, only presence, only intention, only the discipline to pause before reacting, to rise when others shrink, to leave when your worth is questioned, and to speak only when stillness is the more powerful option. This isn't charisma, it's character, rehearsed in silence. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, you are training others how to engage with you, and more importantly, how you engage with yourself. There's a quiet transformation that happens when you stop trying to be understood and instead begin to understand yourself. In the past, you might have reacted quickly, rushing to explain, to defend, to justify your thoughts to people who had already decided not to listen. But that reaction, though natural, is costly. Every time you react to provocation, you hand over authorship of your emotional state. You let someone else decide your pace, your tone, your peace. Stoicism offers a different way, not by suppressing your emotions, but by rerouting them through awareness. It teaches you to notice the spark without fanning it into a fire. This shift is subtle but powerful. You move from constantly adjusting yourself to fit the temperature of the room to becoming the thermostat. You no longer match the chaos. You stabilize it. People start to sense it, not through grand gestures, but through your stillness in small moments. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you pause. Not because you're weak, but because you've decided not to be pulled into their storm. A coworker throws shade in a meeting, and instead of retaliating, you let silence do the speaking. A silence filled with clarity, not fear. That's power. That's command. That's how respect becomes a byproduct of restraint. This transformation is not overnight. It is a practice. But every time you choose presence over performance, you anchor deeper into yourself. You start noticing when someone is leaking your energy, not because they're stronger, but because you've left the door open. And when you close that door, not in anger, but in quiet resolve, you reclaim the room inside you. As Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." The moment you stop chasing reactions and start cultivating intentional responses, you become that master. And the world notices, not because you become louder, but because you become clearer. You no longer prove your worth in debates. You embody it in how little you need to argue. You don't hide your feelings. You guide them. You don't suppress your voice. You time it. You don't react. You respond. That's the difference between performing confidence and living it. This is what it means to command respect, not through domination, but through discipline. Not through control of others, but through self-control that ripples outward. From this point forward, every room you walk into becomes quieter. Not because you demand it, but because your calmness leaves no space for noise. If something in this message resonated with you, if even one sentence made you pause and reflect, it's because part of you already knows this truth. The way you carry yourself teaches people how to treat you, and now you face a quiet challenge. Not to speak louder, not to impress more, but to embody stillness with such clarity that the room listens before you even open your mouth. So I'll ask you this. When was the last time you stayed silent and people noticed anyway? Commanding respect isn't about changing how you talk. It's about changing the energy behind your presence. From now on, when someone interrupts you, will you meet them with reaction or with the calm power of a gaze that speaks louder than correction? When someone disrespects your boundary, will you explain it or simply walk away with no apology and let absence do the talking? When a room grows noisy with ego and chaos, will you add to it or become the quietest, most grounded voice in the space without saying a word? You don't have to become someone else. You just have to return to the version of yourself that never needed to chase respect to begin with. The part of you that already knows, my silence has weight, my restraint has meaning, my energy is not for sale. So here's your moment. If you've ever chosen stillness over noise and felt stronger for it, type "respect is energy" in the comments. I want to know who's out there, who's already living this quietly powerful life, or who's just starting to. And if this message made you feel seen, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, like it. Let others find this space, this practice, this philosophy that reminds us. The strongest presence isn't the loudest one. It's the one that never needs to compete. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Here, we don't chase noise. We master calm. We don't scream for respect. We live in a way that commands it. This isn't the end. This is the beginning of how you walk into every room from now on. Not to prove, not to perform, but to simply exist in full possession of your quiet power.